Hi, hello, vanakkam. This is Venki again with the third episode of Data Talks, and we've had some fantastic session in the last 1 month. We did two sessions. Venkatraman spoke to us about career in data warehousing, and then we spoke about data terminologies last time. Today we've come out with yet another interesting topic. In fact, after attending last week's session, I thought that I know about data warehousing and data terms because Venkat explained that very clearly. But then with the Snowflake Summit happening in Las Vegas today, with the last 2 3 days, I found a word called data mesh. And while I was thinking that yes, now to some extent I know about data terminologies, I hear a new term called data mesh, which I'm completely not aware. And I did a little Googling about what data mesh is. It's a new technology which will help enterprises to, to manage your data and do make sense out of data. And I was thinking that that's what data warehousing has always been doing. And last week, in the last session, Venkat spoke about data lake. And now there is something called data mesh. I know, IT industry, we have to keep learning, but this seems to be too very fast. And in fact, I went back to the Ideas to IT Technologies data team, and I wanted to test them if they know about data mesh, and ask them what data mesh is. And I was surprised to say that they are already aware of data mesh, and I just requested, can you guys do a session on data mesh this time, because that seems to be a term that is really picking up very well, beyond the data lake or lake house, which we learned, in the last session. So once again, I have Venkat, data architect with Ideas to IT Technologies, and you would have seen the brief about him. He has worked with large companies, handling their data in the retail and healthcare vertical. In fact, he's working on some very interesting projects. And in fact, I've requested Venkat to do a session, especially on the projects that he's done. In fact, I used to have a private conversation with him, and in fact, the kind of work that he's done is super exciting. And in fact, whoever is wanting to have a career in data probably should listen to him, so that you will really appreciate how much data is interesting. And I don't want to get bored just with Venkat speaking week after week. I have a young data professional here, and we have Shruti with us. She's also part of the data team at Ideas to IT Technologies, and she's a Snowflake certified developer. And for those of you who do not know what Snowflake is, please go see the last two videos that we had posted on LinkedIn or Facebook or even YouTube and Twitter. And once again, we are currently live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And these sessions would be available on our wall all the time. So at any point of time you want to refer back to any of these sessions, please feel free. And in fact, we are happy to share the presentations that we are using during these sessions with you. I will share Venkat's Twitter ID. All that you need to do is go and request him on Twitter, asking for the presentation, and it will help you on two counts. One, to be connected with him so that you can understand what's happening in the data world, and the second one is to get the presentation and also know what other sessions that he is doing, because henceforth we'll be live on his Twitter ID as well. So coming back, Shruti is also working on Snowflake cloud data warehouse software for healthcare customers, and they've been doing some phenomenal job with Ideas to IT Technologies. And in fact, I don't want to be between you and one more interesting session from the data team of Ideas to IT Technologies. I'll keep coming back with various questions that come up on various forums. Please feel free to ask any question, be it on Facebook or Twitter or Run the World, which is a platform that we are currently using. So that we will ask. And in case any of you want to come to stage, who are on Run the World, who want to come to stage and have interaction with either Venkat or Shruti, please feel free to request for the mic. I'll be very glad to oblige and bring you to the stage. The only request that I have is please wear a shirt. That's the only thing, because we are live on various platforms, and we are also live on professional networks as well. So over to you, Venkat, and looking forward to yet another awesome session between Venkat and Shruti. Have fun. The stage is all yours.
Thanks, Anki. Really happy to be here. The intro was excellent until you reached the part where you said Shruti is a young data professional. I am also young.
but Venkat, you have more experience than Shruti. Okay, so
Anyway, jokes apart, thank you, Enki. Really happy to be here again. It's an excellent experience. Happy to help a lot of people. So without further ado, I'll probably start presenting my screen and jump into what we are here to discuss on. So before, so people can see my screen, right?
yes.
Okay, perfect.
Good.
Perfect. Okay. So like Venki said, we are here to talk about data mesh. So before we jump into that, let's do a from what we actually saw in the last session. So we touched upon what is a data lake, what is a data warehouse, how are they different. So we saw that how data warehouse is when you know what you're going to do with the data, so you bring that in, process, derive analytics. Data lake is more like you know that's useful data, but you still don't know what you're going to do about it. So it's more of a storage focus, dump and then revisit later sort of structure. So we saw about that, and data marts, how they are just a subset of the data warehouse for specific business domains to run their own specific analytics and demarket it for them. A lake house is where it has a mix of good features of both data lake and data warehouse, and we also saw how Snowflake, etc., are some examples of cloud-based SaaS products which can be implemented as a lake house. Okay, so that's where we touched upon the use cases, wherein in which we use cases, what sort of architecture would we go with, whether we would prefer a data lake, prefer a data warehouse, and when we would use a data mart, and then where does lakehouse come into the whole picture. So we were touching upon all of those. So now, before we actually move into data mesh, there should be some issues with the current one, right? Else, why are we actually going to do a new thing? So data mesh is like fairly new. The whole term itself was coined just in 2019. So it's not been something which has been for ages or something. It's a very new term which became like very recent, but it's catching up a lot because of the growth in distributed data architecture. Okay, so before we go into that, I'll probably talk with so since we spoke about data lake, which is like bringing everything centralized, or even in a data warehouse, an enterprise data warehouse, which is a central store of everything managed by a single data team, right? So what problems with that? Number one, now every department of your company has to reach out to that data team to derive your insights, whether that's your sales team, marketing team, or your order team, or your product team. So everyone have to actually work with the data team, and that's when the data team becomes a bottleneck, because they not only have to maintain the data lake, data warehouse, they have to handle the pipelines, handle the data cleansing, handle all sort of data lineage. And what I meant was just ensure the data is usable. Okay, so let's forget about the other terms. So they need to ensure the data is updated, available, and usable. So this itself and the administration of the whole thing, this itself takes up a lot of their time. And in addition to that, they have to process requests from multiple teams, prioritize them. So all this makes the data team a choke point for people to derive their insights. Now, why it's a big problem? Because everything about insight is the timing of it. Okay, so let's say my Black Friday is in 2 weeks. If I don't get that insight now and actually get it 2 weeks later, there is no point getting it at that time. Okay, so for people, okay, forget Black Friday. Let's take some Indian context. Let's say now next month we are gonna have the month of RD in Tamil, right? So the RD sale, which is like very popular, all shops run sales for it. So if you don't actually have insights from what happened and all that, and if the data team even gives the insight 2 days later, even a days later, every day you miss is an opportunity cost. opportunity lost cost, actually it becomes really expensive. So that's where the timeliness of insights come into the picture. So if you are actually dependent on the data team, they run into bottlenecks or other challenges, your insights are delayed, which in many cases would make the insights useless, because time is always the most important thing. Now then, coming to the third one, the lack of domain knowledge. If it's a centralized data team, business teams give the requirements, but the data team has to understand the data, know what the domain is all about. They need to be not a joker of all trades, but actually an expert of all trades. So being a joker doesn't help, because all these are business insights which drive major business strategic decisions. So they need to be a master of all domains, which takes time to acquire. So it's not something which would come on day one, and when it's across the company, across domains, it takes a lot of time. A lot of issues happen. All of this is all a major chokehold. So that's where moving from a centralized single thing into a decentralized thing came into the picture, which is your data mesh. Okay, so now then, what is a data mesh and how does it actually handle this? Okay, so before we go into the components of this rather looking complicated but fairly straightforward concept, we'll talk about the four key aspects of a data mesh architecture. Okay, so in a data mesh architecture, the core thing is reimagining your data as a product. Okay, so it's a whole new concept wherein we have always been familiar with SaaS products like ERP products, analytical assortment planning products, product lifecycle management products, HR products, payroll management products. We have been familiar all of it, but then this data mesh is entirely on the concept of your data itself becoming a product. So you have some data, you maintain it, and then make it available for other people to leverage it as a product. So that's a core aspect of it. Okay. So the next thing is, and what happens in this is, from a centralized data lake, we to move towards a decentralized data mesh, wherein each domain team maintains their own data as a product. So, for example, the sales team, which gets all the sales information, will maintain and make the sales data available as a product. Same way, the product lifecycle management team will make the whole product master data available as a product. So this is how it moves into a domain-oriented, decentralized network of data. Okay. So now, can we just do that? No, obviously, because then each one would follow their own different things, and then it will not be a mesh, but actually a mess, which is not what we want. Okay. So that's where the second aspect comes in, which is the federated governance. Okay. So what is a federated governance? Right over here at the top. Okay. So what is a federated governance? That's just a group of your enterprise architects, your strategy and architecture team, who sit as a overarching design and architecture governance group, who come up with all the policies which every domain team have to align with. For example, let's say there is a documentation policy wherein if I'm creating data as a product, I need to create a documentation and then have it in a common shared, like a SharePoint or a Confluence page, listing out saying, this is the data product, a description about it, and then calling out the individual columns in it, the data types, description of what data is held in each of those columns, how can I actually use that data. So just properly documenting all of it. So that would be a standard established for it. The security policy, because that becomes a standard across the entire company, and if you are in Europe, compliance things like GDPR, everything comes into the picture. So they define the security aspects of it, what sort of documentations to be done, access restrictions and data privacy, data classification, wherein some data is very restricted, not everyone can access. Some data the entire company can access. Some data, very few data can be public. So they describe this data classification and privacy policies, compliance policy, which touched upon earlier, like HIPAA compliance in the case of healthcare data, or GDPR compliance in the case of data in Europe, and all of it. Okay, so now why this? Only then when people interact with each other. So now sales team publish their data as a product, marketing team publish their data as a product, but the marketing would want to use the sales team's data, right? So if all of it is not in a standardized format, it would be difficult for this interoperability or interaction between the teams, between the domain teams. So that's why we are setting up all these policies. Okay, that's the second aspect of it. Now, what's the third aspect? Now, when you go into domain teams, the reason why we don't do that is then everyone needs to have the data expertise, which is not a fair ask, because business people are business people. So they would prefer not to have to deal with a lot of technical stuff. Or they wouldn't prefer to have their own data teams, which would then create a lot of confusions. Their own, so that's where the self-serve data platform comes in, which is right at the bottom over there. Okay, so now what is a self-serve data platform? Okay, so this is where the company's core data team comes into the picture. Okay, what they would do is they'll just create an enabler platform, okay, which makes it easy for each of these domain teams to use either a low code or a no code approach to do all the configuration. For example, let's say you can build a platform wherein you can say you can create S3 connector option, okay, and then you can have a Snowflake table load option. So from a domain team standpoint, all they have to do is drag this S3, give the credentials, drag this Snowflake, mention the schema and table name and the credentials. It will automatically do the load. Very crude example, but they would predominantly define a platform like that, which the domain teams can then conveniently use to manage and maintain their data, which is the product. Okay, additionally, what else they do? They take care of all the access management, monitoring if the entire data structure is fine, administration of the entire data activity, automating all maintenance processes, and then all the other key things like scaling up, scaling down, all of those factors, and then resource maintenance, assigning to domain teams, and all that stuff. So the core data platform deals with the core data functionalities. They don't deal with the actual domain stuff. They deal with the hardcore technical stuff. Okay, which leaves domain teams to do what they are really good at, which is actually work on the domain specific data. Okay, so now let's say I am part of the sales domain team. Okay, so what I would do is I'll ensure the quality of the sales data and then have it available as a product. The product can be even accessed through a API or any of those methods. Okay, and then additionally, if I want to run some analytics, I'll just consume the marketing data or the orders data. I'll just consume that and run analytics within my system using this platform. Okay, now 3 is done. What is the fourth one? Which is nothing but the enabling team. The enabling team, what they do is this domain team, initially it will be like all Greek and Latin to them, right? So you need someone consulting them, guiding them from time to time basis, or assisting them in case of any queries, setting up best practices, showing some examples on how this can all be done, which is nothing but the enabling team at the right. Okay, so a federated data as a product, a domain oriented decentralized data ownership and architecture, which is what we spoke about, then data as a product, and then the self-serve infrastructure as a platform, which is what we saw at the bottom, which is provided by the core data team, and a federated governance. Okay, the 4 key aspects of a data mesh. Okay, now let me do it with an example of what I've seen in one of my experiences. Okay, I'll probably not specify the exact details. Let me just whitewash it a bit. So, a very popular e-commerce retailer. Okay, so how their entire thing is set up is they each team has their own Redshift clusters. Okay, so then there is a central whole catalog for want of a better word, I'm using a catalog wherein people can actually publish each of their data as a product. Okay, so you go to that catalog, you can actually see all the data products which are available from across the teams. For example, there is a master data management team which publish things like all the locations where it operates and all the products it sells. Since I said it's an e-commerce retail, all the products it sells, all the marketplaces across the world where it's listed. So all of that master data information is maintained by that team and is available there as a product. Okay, same way there is another team which owns the sales data and that's available as a product. All of this is available in that catalog, and then that whole thing is integrated through an underlying ETL structure, okay, which serves as the platform to do that replication across clusters. Okay, so from a user, let's say I am part of the inventory team, okay, and I need to consume the information of what are the products and what are the orders which have been placed. Okay, let's say I have to just consume this data. All I need to do is go to that catalog, click a button, and say sync up this data to my cluster. Okay, that's all. You wouldn't write any queries, you wouldn't build an ETL. So that internally triggers an ETL process which syncs up from that Redshift cluster to this Redshift cluster and also runs on a day-to-day basis whenever updates happen on the source to sync it up here as well. Okay, so in this, if you see that underlying any issues with that custom built ETL or the catalog is handled by the data platform team. Any issues with the data, let's say I noticed there is a data quality issue in the product data, like I'm expect one product has been tagged multiple times or the description for a product is incorrect. I notice any of that, I raise a ticket to the domain team who look at the data quality issue. Okay, now the platform team deals with the infrastructure and all of it. The domain team look at the actual business data. Other domain teams, without having to have a lot of coding or technical expertise, can easily pull that data and work on it on their own. Okay, so this is how data mesh makes it convenient, wherein people work where they can best bring their in. Okay, so it's not a good solution for everything. It handles some of the problems. Okay, there are still some problems with data mesh wherein we could have some domain specific logic applied, which makes it difficult to make it as a product. So that's where the standards come in. So that's where standards are very important to set up so that everyone aligns to it. For example, when I talk about standards, what I mean is anyone publishing a data product. So in this specific example, right, the standard is anyone publishing it have to have a documentation in the catalog specifying all the columns, the data types, the description, and they have to onboard their data to that catalog, and they have to ensure the quality, and they have to respond to the tickets raised on the data. Okay, so these are the standard setup. Okay, so that's where all this becomes a very vital thing. Okay, so let me take a quick pause to see if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I thought that it's going to be an introduction, but I looks like you went into a lot of details. I believe people are able to grasp whatever you said because there is a lot of information, useful information that you provided on data mesh. So I just skimmed through Facebook, LinkedIn. So far, no questions. I think you can continue speaking, and if there are
Okay,
any questions, I'll probably interrupt you. And ask then and there itself. And
sure,
those
or
of
we
who
can
are
take it at
tuned
the end.
in, watching us on LinkedIn or Facebook, please don't hesitate to raise your question as a comment so that Venkat or Shruti could answer them.
Sure. Now, I just wanted to take a pause because it's like very heavy, lots of concepts. So I just wanted to take a quick pause to let people digest it a bit.
I thought you wanted to breathe rather than giving a pause for others.
Yeah, that as well. All right. So moving on. So I'll just hand it over to Shruti. So we'll probably look at it from a Snowflake standpoint. So over to you, Shruti.
Yeah, thanks, Venkat. So, yeah, what is Snowflake? So, Snowflake is actually a software as a service product. So, it is powered by an advanced data platform. So, it is actually properly known as for cloud-based data warehousing. But I would actually fix this Snowflake into a data cloud. So by nature, data cloud is a cross region and cross cloud. So which is Snowflake is a cloud agnostic, which is not just specific to one cloud or a region. It actually can run on different cloud systems like AWS, Azure, and GCP. So it can also will be available soon in more cloud regions that what any single cloud infrastructure provider can offer. So this data cloud is an important feature that Snowflake is providing, it, which is very relevant for data mesh architecture in that Snowflake cloud data platform. So with this, it is actually easy for big and global companies with a multi-cloud data landscape to share data with suppliers, partners, and other business units and to implement the data mesh. So when we are talking about data cloud, what data cloud is doing is like the main three concept of data cloud is access, governance, and action in terms of analytics. So these three major terms actually involved in the data mesh architecture. So you can actually fit Snowflake in anywhere where it is dealing with access and governance or any analytical purpose wherever the data mesh architecture is serving. So data cloud is one of the feature for the data mesh architecture. So why is Snowflake a good match for a data mesh? Has other features also. The one is autonomous and self-serving. So as Venkat said, one of the four principles for data mesh is self-serve data infrastructure as a platform. So Snowflake is majorly working on that one principle. So whenever a data is created as a product, so to consume or to share that, the domain team is highly dependent on how complex the platform is built. So most of the data platforms today contains too many components and underlying technologies to handle different types of data like structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data. So Snowflake is just not is a use case for a data warehousing or a data cloud. It has many other features like data lake or something like that. So it's just that we can handle any type of data when it comes to Snowflake. So Snowflake is the best platform for serving self-service data infrastructure as a platform since it can actually handle many types of data. So next, coming to the low cost of ownership and better scalability. So basically, Snowflake is a SQL cloud data platform. So the platform is for both big data and normal data. It handles many data formats, and also all you need to learn is like normal SQL. But again, coming to it, it does not support SQL. It also supports other languages like Java, Scala, or Python. So, and with elastic scalability and isolated multi-cluster compute, which is actually a basic architecture of a Snowflake, it actually helps the domain team to get access to the dedicated resources that need without impacting performance or concurrency for other teams. So Snowflake also have another best feature in it, which it can actually get the historical data easily with time travel feature, which is actually only specific with Snowflake. So data mesh architecture and technology landscape are less complex with Snowflake as a central component in your data platform. So coming to the easy to share data. So one of the major challenge with data mesh is how the data that is built as product by separate cross-functional teams can be distributed or shared across many domains in a timely manner with a reasonable cost. So Snowflake has a unique way to share data due to its multi-cluster shared data architecture. So this is where we call a Snowflake data marketplace. So Snowflake has a unique way to share data due to its like multi cluster share data. So it actually makes access to live data within minutes without copying or moving the data. So the data consumer can query the data shared from data producer instantly, and Snowflake provides simply a better way to share data. So a data share can be done inside teams or other external organizations such as your consumers or customers or partners. So data sharing helps improving customer satisfaction, increasing the transparency, and boost business performance, which is exactly the one of the most important objectives of data mesh. So next, coming to the simplified and reduced time to market. So data sharing happens usually through methods like API, FTP, and other cloud bucket storage, which is much more complex and costly. But with Snowflake, you can reduce sustainability cost and time to market. You can even monitor easily how your data is used, understand your access to your data, and when they do it. You can also learn what data is most used by organization, partners, and customers. So these are the different features that Snowflake provides that is exactly fit into the data mesh architecture. So Snowflake can help you deliver a single data experience integrating storage, compute, and services across multiple region and cloud and take your business to the next level. So the Snowflake platform fits rather well with data mesh to handle large data volume with speed and efficiency. Yeah, that's it from my end, Venkat.
Hey, Shruti, thank you so much. But I can understand you're a Snowflake certified developer because uh, I mean the kind of confidence with which you spoke was really good. But the only thing is, I do not know how much people who are watching grasped it, because at least I felt it was a little too fast.
Oh,
Uh, so I mean, I'm sure you are aware of it. That's why it was coming out very 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 quickly. But just I mean, in case you have any questions, people who are watching us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and you want Shruti to repeat any of those, because maybe I'm too old, or probably I do not know much about data, and I thought that she covered a lot within a very short time. So okay, so there are no questions as of now, Shruti and Venkat. You can.
Yeah, I'd like to add something, okay, touching upon what you started off initially. So we're talking about, we just now came to know what is a data warehouse, data lake, and suddenly you brought a new term, data mesh. So it's not necessarily that now the data mesh is here, we have to immediately jump into the data mesh bandwagon. So this actually something which happened in the past, wherein when Hadoop became hot, every company was like, okay, I'm into Hadoop now. I'm into Hadoop now. But what they didn't understand was whether that fits for them. How do they use it? Do they really need it? So that's why Hadoop had a very high failure rate in many companies, because they didn't know why they were only getting into it. They just got into it because everyone is getting into Hadoop. Okay. So that's very important for us to consider when we talk about all of this. So when we talk about data mesh, data lake, data warehouse, it doesn't mean that no longer use data warehouse, no longer use data lake, only use data mesh. It doesn't mean like that. Each use case would differ in a certain way. So, data warehouse was originally a cloud-based data warehousing was brought to deal with some of the issues with the on-prem database, and then the data lake came in because of the advancements in technologies, the amount of IoT data, the amount of social media data, the amount of unstructured data. So that came in next. On top of it, to do something better. Then the lakehouse came in, which people thought, okay, I need to do both, but I don't want to implement multiple solutions and then handle how data moves across all of them. So that's when the lakehouse came in. Now, the centralized system has an issue. So that's where the data mesh comes in. So it's just an evolving thing to handle some inconsistencies and issues with existing ones. But that doesn't necessarily mean this is the only solution which you have to go to. So that assessment is very important to understand where your current landscape stands, where you are looking at in the future. So that has to be taken into account as well. But then if your organization is never going to mature in that way, then there is no point going to that and investing all of that effort to do something which you are not going to leverage it properly. So that's where understanding all these concepts is important, and then you need to apply specifically the way it suits your purpose. For example, in small companies, you don't actually like, let's say you're implementing Snowflake as a data warehouse, you don't actually explicitly spin off separate data marts or something. You can probably just spin off separate data warehouses for them and ask them to run on that on the same underlying data, and then isolate their workload so that they're still demarcated, they have their own security and all of that stuff. Okay, so that's where that assessment is very important. So what I just want to stress out here is we are not talking that one is always better than the other. What we are talking about is educating on the options, and then what shortcomings were there because of which this came in. Now, it's easily possible that 2 years down the line, data mesh has some issues, and then we can look at something else. For example, on-prem to cloud became hot. Okay. Now with cloud and all that, and then the security challenges, control of the data and all that, now there is a new trend starting wherein people are getting that cloud-based auto maintenance, auto upgrade as an image, and then installing it in their local service. So they get the benefit of the cloud, but they can maintain the service. They don't have to do anything more. So this is actually a service which is being provided by Azure and all that. Okay. So it is a new style which is coming up, which is being used a lot in the banking and healthcare sector, where their data security is a key challenge. Okay, so that's where you can actually even come up with solutions which combines 2 or 3 aspects of it. So the solution and what you do, there is no one size fits all. Okay, it's like personal finance, right? It's personal.
Fantastic. If we are done with the presentation, you can stop sharing the screen so that we can nice conversation and people can see us better. Okay. So there are a couple of questions that has come up. Somebody's asked, can you tell me the difference between data warehouse and data mesh in very simple terms?
Okay. A data warehouse is a centralized data store which is being managed by a company level single data team in most cases. Okay. A data mesh is a decentralized domain managed data infrastructure in which the centralized data team only acts as an enabler. So they in the first case, they are responsible for the quality of the data and deriving insights out of it. In the second case, they aren't responsible for that. They just ensure they enable the domain team and provide them all they need to carry out their functionalities and derive their insights.
Okay, so there's one question from LinkedIn, and this question is to Shruti. And the question is data mesh, concerned only with Snowflake? Is it a Snowflake term or is it a generic term? If it is generic, will other cloud data warehouses also? Can we create data meshes using other cloud data warehouses as well?
Yeah, Venki. So Snowflake is just one of the use case of the data mesh. That's just a sample or example, or Snowflake is maybe just fit into that exact term for data mesh with higher features with it. So it's just a generic data mesh is just a generic term, and it also can be implemented with other clouds, or like how Venkat explained with the AWS. So it can also be implemented with other technologies and stacks.
Okay. So what is there's one more question that has come up, and what is the first step that I need to take to implement data mesh in my enterprise? I mean, any one of you can take it, it's not mentioned to anyone. So,
okay. Shruti, shall I take it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So first step, assess what data is there across the enterprise or across the company. So assess what we have, and then actually before that, actually assess if you actually are having an issue with what is happening currently. If you don't have an issue, your data team is not a bottleneck, they have all the domain knowledge you need, they are doing an excellent job, why go for a data mesh? So first assess if you are having an issue. If you are having an issue, let's go with that assumption. Then the first step would be do a data assessment across the company, and then start setting the governance principles and the data platform, and then start moving domain teams one by one into it, and then move the ownership onto them. So that would be how you approach it. But assessment standards, the data platform would be like that would be the first things to do before actually bringing in your domain teams.
Fantastic. Okay, this question I think looks like it's for Shruti, and I believe this is from another Snowflake certified developer, because the question is a little detailed. So the question is, okay, in Snowflake, I believe there are snapshots and the same set of data can be used by various people. There are images, and data mesh is also decentralized data. Are these both the same or is it different?
Um, I guess to be very specific, it's kind of same. Yeah. So Venkat, do you need to add up on this?
Yeah, sure. So that's something called zero copy cloning in Snowflake. So what happens is different people can actually work on a single version of the data concurrently with isolated workloads. So when you are actually sharing that data, it gets reflected and they updated continuously, and you will actually be accessing the real time whatever is available. So that's the aspect of it which makes it easy to actually consume data. So you just need to handle the access aspect of it, a secure access aspect of it. Once it's done, it doesn't physically move the data. So in the example I quoted with Redshift, there is a physical data movement involved, but in this case, that's why it's called a zero copy cloning. So it just creates a reference and then handles based on that. And then eventually it uses the same source of data, but then handles it in a intelligent way. So that's where it's quick and available to access instantaneously, near instantaneously.
Okay, fantastic. Venkat, this question is for you from one Mr. Naveen Mayandi. He's asking scale and complexity of the data mesh. I'm not able to understand this question. He just said scale and complexity of the data mesh. And do you understand the question, Venkat or Naveen? Can you explain that question? At least I'm not able to understand that. You want to come to stage, Naveen, and ask Venkat that question live? Okay, again, I will read it for the benefit of Venkat and Shruti. Scale and complexity of the data mesh. Is your organization complicated enough? I'm sorry, Naveen, at least, I'm not able to understand the question. I'm not sure if Venkat and Shruti understand that. Can you elaborate that
Yes.
question?
To take a guess, maybe question could be: should the organization be complex enough to actually go for a data mesh? Probably.
Yeah, could be. But anyway, that's a good question. Even if he does not mean that, we could answer that question and wait for him to. Okay, yeah, Naveen confirms. Whatever you have understood it as is right. So I think that's a
Okay.
question that he's asking. Should your
Okay.
organization be complex enough
Okay.
to implement data mesh?
Um, like in everything in life, trying to be intelligent to show you are intelligent is not always a good thing to do. So, going for
Yeah.
data mesh just because your
Is that
organization.
is that for data mesh or for Naveen, Venkat?
No, that's just a life principle. Sorry, Naveen. So, what I meant to say was, it should be based on the use case. So even if your data is really complicated and all that, it doesn't necessarily mean you only have to go for a data mesh. Okay, so the data can be like really complicated, but you could have just two domain teams in your entire company. Then what's the whole point of going for a domain specific thing? Because your central data team can easily handle two domains. Makes it less cumbersome, creates better ownership, creates better accountability, and all that, right? So rather than the complexity of the data or the size of the data, all that, it is more like the organizational structure and the use case which you are exactly trying to implement, which determines what you go with. Okay, so let's say I have an organizational structure wherein I have like 20 departments, each of which depend on others for their own data, and everyone needs a lot of insights on a day-to-day basis and all of it. Data mesh could be a good option in those cases.
Fantastic. Naveen, okay, yeah, it looks like he's acknowledged, saying that he is happy with the answer. Okay, this is a
Thanks,
question
man.
again to Shruti. This is from a career aspirant in Snowflake. This person is asking, I'm a SQL developer, and does it help me in my career if I become a Snowflake certified developer? And if yes, how easy or difficult it is to become a Snowflake certified developer?
So yes, of course, Snowflake is basically a SQL data platform. So being a SQL developer is obviously a good chance to become a Snowflake developer. So like being certified, certification is just as easy, like because it doesn't involve the any logical terms. It just a basic architecture of how Snowflake works. So it's actually easy and good for the career path.
Okay. So becoming a Snowflake certified developer is fairly easy according to Shruti, but I still know a few people in my circle struggling with that. But any which ways, whatever limited knowledge that I have on data, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Shruti and Venkat, I think Snowflake works on ANSI SQL. So it's a great career path for anybody who is a SQL developer to learn Snowflake and very quickly move into Snowflake. And in fact, Snowflake is fast growing, and it is only next to Redshift now. They have close to 18% of market share in the cloud data warehouse space. And it's a very good career path for you to learn Snowflake, become a Snowflake certified developer. And if you're just doing SQL development, I think there's a great career path for you to move towards Snowflake. And okay, I have a question from Archen. Is this data mesh suitable for product-based companies only, wherein they have several departments, or this data mesh suits for service-based companies like us? I do not know what that like us is, Archen. It'll be good if you tell me which company you work for, because you know. Okay, but I will just take it as service company. Okay. So again, Venkat and Shruti, just to summarize that question, is data mesh suitable only for product-based companies, or is it suitable for service-based companies?
Okay.
So
Yeah, go ahead, Shruti.
all right. So from my point of view, so it is actually not specific with any service or product base. So it is actually a concept, so where any company or anyone can use it just to easy the process and deliver it to many clients and consumers.
Yeah, just to add to that, Enki, services company wouldn't per se have any data, a lot of data, right? So they wouldn't need to do except for their financial reporting and then project management. So they would have some data, but it's more the product companies which would have a lot of their own personal data. So it's from that standpoint that it's more applicable for product data, but like Shruti said, it's not restricted that it's only for product data. So
Yeah,
we do
but
if we
but I think your answer is more from IT product and IT services
very
company,
true. Yeah,
right?
that's true.
So because if you take other industry, I think services company also generate a lot of data.
Very true. Yeah.
Because Archana is specifically asking about the IT industry, the answer is so. But then I want to take this question a little beyond IT industry, so that's why I had to reason. Okay, so that's good engagement. I think there are a couple of people who have just joined on LinkedIn as well. People who tuned in late, we spoke about data mesh and how to implement data mesh using Snowflake. And you could see the uh, recording later on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. And we'll also update the post with Venkat's and my Twitter IDs. You could follow any one of us and ping us for the slides that we used today. You can also look at the last two episodes about data talks. We spoke about a career in data. We spoke about what data lakes is, and today we spoke about what data mesh is. It's been a very engrossing 50 minutes because we budgeted only for 30 minutes, but I think there was a lot of engagement in terms of questions that were asked by the participants. Thank you so much for being here very patiently at this time. So feel free to look at the recordings as well and ask any question. And Venkat and Shruti have promised that they will be looking at the post at least for the next couple of days to see if there are any questions to answer them there. And in case you want to get the slides, follow Venkat or me or Shruti either on LinkedIn or Twitter, and requests for the presentation will be very glad to share. And those of you who want to have a career in Snowflake, as Shruti said, if you're conversant with SQL and you love data, learn Snowflake, probably become a Snowflake certified developer. And if you want to be part of the awesome data team comprising of Venkat and Shruti with Ideas to IT Technologies, do visit www.ideas2it.com. And in case you fulfill all our selection criteria, you can also work with phenomenal data projects along with our data architect Venkat and senior data engineer Shruti. Thank you so much, Venkat and Shruti. I know you guys are busy, and I know how much you just stepped in from another customer meeting right into this live session. And I'm sure that the people who saw would have been immensely benefited with the knowledge that you shared. Looking forward to the next episode in 2 weeks' time from now. And that would be yet another, interesting talk related to data. So, we'll try to get more data architects. And those of you who want to follow Snowflake, Snowflake Summit is happening today and tomorrow at Las Vegas, and it's streamed live as well. There's some phenomenal amount of information that is available. You could network with amazing speakers. Please feel free to, and it happens for people who are tuning in from India. It happens a little late in the night, but it's worth losing the sleep. We've lost our sleep over Netflix series, but this is one which is worthwhile to know about data and where Snowflake is heading to. Okay, closing comments, Shruti and Venkat, and we will close the live session.
Over to you, Shruti.
Yeah, so thank you for this opportunity, Vinky, first of all. So this is my first time doing such live session, so it was interesting, and also me telling this to people was like very interesting in way too. Thank you.
We enjoyed it as well.
Thanks, Venki. Like the past two sessions, I had a great time. I'm happy to be here. Gives a good feeling when I get to talk to people and interact and understand. Keeps me on my toes as well. That I need to keep learning more stuff. Seeing the interest people show. Unfortunately, yes, like you said, older. So I need to.
That's a comparison term, Venkat. You don't have to take it literally. Okay. Whomsoever feels that, I address Venkat as a senior data architect, and I address Shruti as a young professional, data professional. If you believe that I am right, probably give a thumbs up to me, so that, Venkat would feel that, I'm just not pulling his legs and I really meant it, and you all feel the same.
But on a serious note, Venki, this was a really good experience. I'm so happy to be here. And it's great to interact with a lot of people. And a special thanks to you. You make us feel very comfortable, and you are an amazing host. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
that.
Thank you so much, because I have a selfish motive in this. I also want to learn more about data, and you guys are so busy. And when I ask you to teach me, you guys don't find time for that. And this is just a big to say that, hey, you know what, come, let's speak on live. And somehow I also learn along with other people. So thank you, people. In case anybody wants to come live to the stage and have a chat with Venkat and Shruti, we could be available for the next couple of minutes. Otherwise, we will close the live session. Those who are logged in into Run the World can probably request for the mic, and we can bring you to the stage, and you could have a live chat with Venkat and Shruti. Okay. So looks like nobody wants to take the offer. Naveen did request for the mic, but somehow, okay. Um, but the moment I gave him the mic, he refused it. I do not know why. Anyway, thank you so much. Good night. And we'll come back with the fourth episode of Data Talks 2 weeks from now with yet another interesting topic. In case you want us to cover anything related to data, please feel free to ping myself or Venkat on LinkedIn or Twitter. We'll be very glad to oblige because when we take such sessions, we also learn. And as I told before, at Ideas to IT, we work with a lot of amazing data projects, and we'll be very glad to share our knowledge with our community. That's extremely important for us because we might prospectively be talking to one of our future colleagues. So it's a pleasure doing this for all of you. Thank you. Bye bye. And
Thank you.
looking
Bye.
forward
Thank
to
Have a
you.
seeing
nice
you all
evening.
again in 2 weeks' time. Bye.